The Chicago Sky just traded Angel Reese to the Atlanta Dream for 2 late first-round picks and a second-round swap, and nobody in the front office lost a minute of sleep over it. 2 All-Star selections, the all-time single-season rebounding record, double-doubles almost every other night, and Chicago basically said, "Take her, she's yours," to Atlanta for what amounts to lottery tickets and a bag of chips. So why would a team willingly dump a player supposedly that good for next to nothing? Well, they just leaked the real reason behind the trade, and it goes all the way back to her desperate so-called manufactured rivalry with Caitlin Clark. Is Reese on her way out of the WNBA? Let me know down in the comments below.
Angel Reese traded to the Atlanta Dream, as you guys know. Jeff Pagliocca couldn't wait to send her packing. See ya. In fact, reports are coming out that Jeff Pagliocca was so excited about sending Angel Reese to Atlanta, he personally packed her bags.
Let's talk about a question that doesn't get asked enough. If Angel Reese was genuinely making the Chicago Sky better, why did they finish 10 wins and 34 losses in 2025 and miss the playoffs for the second straight year with her on the roster? Reese arrived in Chicago in 2024 carrying real buzz, a national championship from LSU, and a social media following that made her feel like a franchise cornerstone before she played a single professional minute. And look, the numbers she put up looked good on the surface. Double-doubles, the all-time single-season rebounding record, 2 All-Star selections. So on paper, you'd think this team was getting better, right? Except they went 13-27 in her first season, and then 10-34 in her second. And that's not a team trending upward, that's a team falling off a cliff.
It's just a fact. She is, it's more than a fact. She is not good at layups. But I was looking at her stats. I jotted some down right here, and she shoots an abysmal 39% from the field. She shot below 50% on shots less than 5 feet away, which is bad. And even worse than that is that shots from 5 to 9 feet, 13%.
So let's talk about what those rebounding numbers actually were, because this is where it gets interesting. A big chunk of Reese's rebounds came off her own missed shots, and social media started calling them me-bounds for a reason. She'd fire up a contested attempt near the basket, miss it, grab the ball herself, and the box score logged that as a rebound. 2 possessions burned to get back to square one. Her field goal percentage sat at just 39% in 2024, and while she nudged it up to around 42% in 2025, her three-point shooting stayed near 18% both years, which is essentially zero, so defenses never had to respect her from the outside. You can't have a post player miss half her own shots from under the basket.
It's time to launch a federal investigation into Angel Reese for sports gambling. Bang! You could only be this bad on purpose, right? Bang! With the recent developments of NBA players and NBA coaches being investigated by the FBI for sports gambling, is it time we take a look at Angel Reese? I think so. Bang! She told everyone, take my over and rebounds. Trust me, I grabbed my own misses. Bang! It really makes you think, was she throwing games they finished last in the conference? Bang!
She also wasn't creating shots for her teammates. No real passing out of the post, no pick-and-roll reads, nothing that put other players in better positions. So Chicago ran a big chunk of their offense through a player who needed extra possessions just to generate the same output a more efficient player produces in one, and the wins didn't come. Now picture this. During that exact same stretch, Caitlin Clark walked into Indiana and broke 62 records in her rookie season alone, and the Fever went to the playoffs for the first time in 9 years. Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, all of them played better basketball because Clark shared the floor with them. Clark genuinely ran the offense in a way that created open looks for everyone around her. That's what a player who makes a team better actually looks like.
Angel Reese isn't even the biggest star in pretend basketball. She is getting outshined in a league where outside of Caitlin Clark, there are no stars. And you expect me to believe Angel Reese is the biggest star in basketball? What in the hell is going on here?
Chicago had losing seasons before Reese arrived, sure, but they didn't get better with her there. And that's what a front office watches. Not the all-star appearances, not the rebounding record. They watch the win column, and the win column got worse every single year she suited up for that team. Reese's supporters kept pointing to her individual numbers as evidence she was an elite player. And sure, if you only look at the box score in isolation, they look impressive. But individual numbers only mean something if they connect to the team winning more games. The Sky weren't winning more games. They were winning fewer, finishing with one of the worst records in the entire league in 2025. So before we even get into the locker room, the suspensions, the things she said about her own teammates, the basketball case for keeping Angel Reese had already collapsed on its own.
May 22nd, 2025, Angel Reese had one of the greatest stat-padding possessions of all time. 4 to 5 offensive me-bounds this possession. It is humanly impossible to be this bad. FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, somebody investigate. Look at that. Bang! Wide open layup turns into a brick show. She has to be doing it on purpose, right? Bang! It doesn't get more blatant than this. Throwing the game, you have to ban her for life. What is that? Bang! There's evidence every single game. I mean, come on, she's shooting backwards without looking. Nancy Drew, where are you? Bang!
There's a version of this story where a young star speaks her mind, gets misunderstood, and the organization overreacts. That's not what happened in Chicago. The incidents kept stacking up one after another until there was no charitable reading left. Go back to the very first game of the 2025 WNBA season in Indiana, where Reese publicly claimed she was a victim of discrimination during the game. That's a serious accusation, and the league investigated it and found no evidence to support it. Right out of the gate, in Game 1, her default response to something uncomfortable was to make it bigger and louder instead of just playing basketball, and that set the tone for everything that followed.
Angel Reese acted like a total and complete idiot, and it got called out for it. Over a take foul. Stop it. We all know what's behind this.
Then came the comments about Courtney Vandersloot, and this one's worth slowing down on. Vandersloot tore her ACL during the season, and while she was recovering from that injury, Reese went public with her thoughts on the roster's future. She didn't pull her punches either. Reese told reporters that the team couldn't rely on Vandersloot to come back at the age that she's at, and said Chicago needed someone, probably a little younger with some experience, somebody who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship. That's not a private frustration that leaked out. Reese said that openly, on the record, about a teammate who was sitting out with a torn ACL, and Vandersloot reportedly didn't appreciate it one bit. Vandersloot isn't some fringe player Reese could dismiss without consequences. She's a veteran with genuine respect across the entire league, and calling her out like that while she was injured told every other player on that roster exactly what Reese thought of them the moment they stopped being useful to her. That kind of comment doesn't stay in a press conference. It follows you into the locker room every single day.
We can't rely on Courtney to come back at that age that she's at, Reese said. I know she'll be a great asset for us, but we can't rely on that. We need someone probably a little younger with some experience, somebody who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship and has done it before. Courtney Vandersloot, by the way, 2-time WNBA champion, 5-time All-Star, 2-time All-WNBA first team, left the New York Liberty, a championship caliber team, to come help out the Chicago. Oh, damn. Oh, damn, oh, dang, oh, damn. It's all right, Courtney.
And it wasn't just Vandersloot. Camila Cardoso, Reese's own front court partner and the player Chicago is now building their entire future around, reportedly walked out on Reese at some point during the season. When your closest teammate on the floor decides she'd rather leave than deal with you, that's not a personality clash you can smooth over with a team dinner. Then in September 2025, Reese told the Chicago Tribune that the team needed to get good players and great players and stop settling for what we did this year. On the surface, that sounds like someone demanding accountability, but she published those comments in a newspaper while she was still under contract with those same teammates she was publicly embarrassing. That's not leadership. That's burning the house down on your way out the door.
Angel Reese boldly and competitively called out the Chicago Sky for how they would move forward in terms of needing talent if they were going to compete, saying that she wanted to be a part of the organization and she wanted to compete at a high level. It didn't go over so well, Jay, in the public eye domain, at least as far as Chicago brass was concerned, and she actually ended up being suspended for a half a game.
The Sky suspended her for conduct detrimental to the team, and she picked up an automatic additional suspension for collecting her 8th technical foul of the season on top of that. After the suspension, Reese didn't return to the court for the final 3 games, with the team citing a back injury. Some people watching this unfold noticed that footage of Reese twerking on a trip to Vegas surfaced around the same time, so make of that what you will. Suspensions like that don't come after one bad week. They come after a front office has spent months documenting a pattern, trying quieter fixes that didn't work, and finally running out of options that don't involve putting it on paper. Meanwhile, in Indiana, Caitlin Clark was dealing with her own injury and her own pressure, and Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, Sophie Cunningham, and Kelsey Mitchell were all talking publicly about what it meant to play alongside her. And none of those conversations sounded anything like what was leaking out of the Sky's locker room.
A player who herself, after her sophomore season, refused to show up to her end-of-season press conference. Jeff Pagliocca wants no parts of Angel Reese. And she's out of there. Shout out to Bane. Free Cardoso. She is finally free. So they just wanted to get rid of her and didn't even try to get something in return.
Atlanta's front office framed this trade like they'd just landed the missing piece, and they called Reese a dynamic talent and a perfect fit for what they're building, which sounds great until you actually look at the roster they're putting on the floor. The Dream already have Brittany Grenier and Brianna Jones in the front court, and both of them are big. Both of them are slow in space, and both of them need the ball close to the basket to do their best work. Jones averaged 12.8 points and 7.7 rebounds in 2025 and finished as an all-star, so she's not some bench filler you can just slide out of the rotation. Now add Reese, who also needs the ball near the paint and shot just 18% from 3 in 2025, and you've got three bigs who all want the same real estate on the floor at the same time.
I mean, I'm still trying to make sense of it because you had Bree Jones and you had Brittany Griner.
You can't play Griner, Jones, and Reese together in any meaningful stretch because you'd have three players crowding the exact same areas, and no one pulling a defender out to the three-point line. Any halfway decent defense just packs the paint and dares Atlanta to beat them from distance, and Atlanta's new front court can't do that. Reese's three-point shooting is essentially non-existent, so the spacing problem gets worse every time she shares the floor. And the Dream are going to spend a lot of time in half-court sets where their best option is a contested mid-range or a post-up that a packed defense already prepared for. Alicia Gray finished 4th in MVP voting in 2025, and Ryan Howard also put up an all-star caliber season, so Atlanta genuinely has two of the better guards in the league, right? But their offensive game depends on movement and spacing, on cutting lanes staying open and defenders being pulled away from the paint. Reese compresses all of that. Fan reactions inside Atlanta's own fanbase have been mixed for exactly this reason, because the people who actually watch the Dream regularly understand that what made Gray and Howard so good was the room they had to operate, and Reese's presence near the basket shrinks that room.
Saying this right now, Angel Reese is only going to be in Atlanta for 2 years. This year and next year until her rookie contract's up with. Want to know how I know? Because Atlanta's not going to offer her the max contract. Atlanta's not going to give her the super max. Because you don't give the 4th or 5th best player on your team the supermax.
Then there's the culture question nobody in Atlanta's front office wants to answer directly. They watched Chicago spend 2 full seasons managing Reese's drama, a suspension, public callouts of teammates in the press, a discrimination claim the league investigated and didn't substantiate, and Cardozo reportedly walking out on her. And the Dream's bet is that a change of scenery fixes all of that. Teams have made that exact bet on difficult players for decades, and it almost never works, because the behavior doesn't live in the building, it travels with the person. Atlanta's locker room had been building something real with Gray and Howard as the core, and now it's absorbing a player whose previous team suspended her for conduct detrimental to the team. That's not a minor footnote. That's the last official thing Chicago put on paper about her before shipping her out.
Yeah, let me tell you something right now. Unless there are extenuating circumstances, and the circumstances have got to be major, teams do not trade superstar players because they're outspoken. Teams do not send away their cash cow because they're difficult to work with.
Atlanta didn't land a missing piece. They acquired a player whose best statistical season ran alongside her team's worst record, whose front court presence creates spacing problems they don't have a clean answer for, and whose locker room history is now their problem to manage instead of Chicago's. Meanwhile, Indiana's sitting there with Caitlin Clark coming back from injury after a full offseason of preparation, Aaliyah Boston anchoring the defense, Kelsey Mitchell thriving in Clark's pick-and-roll system, and a coaching staff that already proved it can get this group to the playoffs. The Fever eliminated the Dream in the first round of the 2025 playoffs, and they did it while Clark was sidelined with a groin injury.
Angel Reese did not request a trade from Chicago. The Chicago Sky said, "We just don't want to deal with the headache. We don't care. We don't want her here. She's been a locker room cancer from the jump. Quits the first year, quits the second year, fakes a back in my neck, my back, fakes a back injury, doesn't even finish her first season of Unrivaled, can't be bothered with her second season, so she just comes in late."
2 first-round picks that don't convey until 2027 and 2028, plus a second-round swap. That's what Chicago accepted for a 2-time All-Star and the holder of the single-season rebounding record, and the question that won't go away is simple. If she's that good, why did they take so little? GM Jeff Pagliocca gave the public answer about roster balance and rebuilding around Camila Cardoso, and sure, that's true as far as it goes. But it doesn't explain why Chicago didn't shop Reese harder, didn't sit back and wait for a better offer, didn't push for a proven player coming back the other way instead of a pair of picks that won't even land for 2 or 3 years. Teams that genuinely believe they're trading away a star player don't settle that fast, and they don't settle that cheap.
Many people are saying the Chicago Sky got fleeced. Let's run with that. Imagine you want to get rid of a player so bad that you're willing to get fleeced in the process. Imagine you want to get rid of a player you're so desperate to rid your team of this player. A player whose fan base had Isabel Harrison and Dana Evans crying at the end of the season press conference.
Let's talk about what those picks actually are, because this matters. Atlanta just added Reese and thinks they're a contender now, right? So if the Dream win more games, those 2027 and 2028 first-rounders fall somewhere in the 8 to 12 range, maybe lower, which puts them squarely in late lottery territory with limited upside. Chicago took that deal anyway, and they took it quickly, and that speed tells you everything about what was really driving this trade. Teams don't accept below-market returns for star players unless getting the player off the roster fast matters more than squeezing out full value. Chicago wasn't optimizing here. They were closing a chapter they'd already stopped reading.
When you have a player of that caliber, when you have a once-in-a-lifetime or once-in-a-generation star, or even a regular superstar like Anthony Edwards or Jokic in Denver, you don't trade players of that caliber because you never know when you'll have the chance to find another one. You know who gets traded? Angel Reese.
Cardoso is the player the Sky actually believe in long-term. She's a legitimate center with a skill set that fits a modern offense, good footwork, real touch around the basket, and the kind of two-way potential that front offices actually get excited about. She's also the player who reportedly walked out on Reese during the season, so keeping both of them in the same building wasn't a real option anymore. You can't build around Cardoso while Reese is still in the locker room after everything that went down between them. The suspension in September 2025 gave Chicago the paper trail they needed. Once that documentation existed, the trade stopped being a question of whether and turned into a question of when and for what. The Sky could point to the suspension and say they followed the proper process, and nobody inside or outside the league could argue they acted without cause. There's also the contract sitting on the books. Reese had 2 more seasons left on her deal, and that meant Chicago would keep paying a player who'd publicly criticized her teammates in the press, generated drama the coaching staff had to manage constantly, and delivered a 10-win, 34-loss record alongside all of it. At some point, the cost of keeping her on the payroll stops being about basketball and starts being about everything else piling up around it.
Since they drafted Angel Reese, all of a sudden, the Bravado struggled to win games. And ESPN expects me to believe that the organization is the problem here? Either way, I don't think basketball had anything to do with why Angel Reese was traded. I think Angel Reese was traded because the Bravado thought that she was more trouble than she's worth.
So here's what Chicago actually bought with this trade. a clean locker room, a real fresh start around Cardoso, and the ability to stop spending front office energy managing a situation that had stopped being manageable a long time before the suspension made it official. The picks are almost beside the point. If the rest of the league genuinely saw Reese as a player who made teams better, Chicago would have had multiple teams on the phone and held out for something closer to real market value. Atlanta's offer landed, Chicago accepted it fast, and no other team jumped in with a competing bid. That's not a front office getting outmaneuvered. That's a front office that got exactly what it wanted, which was out. And now Camila Cardoso gets to find out what this team looks like when it's actually built around her. Chicago didn't trade Angel Reese because the stats stopped looking good. They traded her because 2 seasons of double-doubles, a suspension, public teammate callouts, and a 10-34 record proved that some numbers fill up a box score and do absolutely nothing for the win column. And Camila Cardoso is now the player they're actually betting on. Caitlin Clark broke 62 records in her first year, dragged the Fever back to the playoffs after nearly a decade of missing them, and did it without suspending herself or throwing teammates under the bus in the Chicago Tribune. Drop a comment below on whether Atlanta's got any real answer for what Clark and the Fever bring in 2026, because Indiana's sitting there with a fully healthy Clark, a proven playoff roster, and 0 reasons to lose sleep over Angel Reese in a new uniform. Is Reese on her way out of the WNBA? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.